what could be more memorable than a visit from Matt Sekeres from Sekeres Price? And maybe you needed some travel insurance to get to Abbotsford. Did you go to Abbotsford last night?
I did not. Went to Penticton.
Sure.
Spent some time with Pinder. That was interesting. He
you only need a little.
Is he in Oz right now? Did I hear this correctly?
Yeah, he's in Australia.
So did he figure what? I'm already 1 hour into a 17-hour flight to Sydney by being in Penticton. I'll just leave from here.
No, it was. We've had all summer off. So as soon as training camp starts, you know what I should do is take another couple weeks.
There you go.
And go to the other side of the planet.
Get it really off, because
Yeah.
they can't reach me over here.
But I like the way you characterize that. I ran into Pinder. That was interesting. That's all the feedback we get back. It's always interesting, or that was something. Yeah, I saw Pinder.
Yeah, he looked like he was really fitting in Penticton, and we had him on the show last week, and he was there and on time, and his usual ball of yucks, and so had a great hit with him, and talked a little bit about the Flames, and talked a little bit about, of course, the trades last year and everything that's gone down between the two franchises. But I got to say, guys, like I've been here in Vancouver 17 years now, and I've been accustomed to the Flames being sort of the stalwart rivalry. Sometimes it's a little heavier than others. Sometimes it's a little more, fiercer. Of course, we had the infamous line brawl with Tortorella and all that. And while the Canucks at one point, when they were good, had a really good rivalry with the Blackhawks, and then lost to Boston in the final, and so wound up hating Boston. And there was some rivalry there. There was always Calgary. And of course, in 2015, we saw it again in a playoff series that the Flames won. I'm here to report, I think the Canucks and Canucks fans are now looking a little further north of your city.
You don't care about us.
A new rival. It's
lost interest.
It's a seismic shift here that we're looking up the highway to that team in the Alberta capital as the new rival after last year's playoff.
Well, you can have them, quite frankly, because they've been
they're not fun to deal with.
Yeah, they've been in our craw for long enough. Please, if you want to take a few years, by all means, you go ahead. But I was thinking about that this morning. It's the playoff series last year, and of course, everyone's still talking about Edmonton. What's the vibe in Vancouver? Because it's still very cup or bust in Edmonton. This is the year they're going to pick up right where they left off. I don't know if anyone was expecting that run that Vancouver went on last year. What's your sense as to where they?
Yeah, well, the season was a big surprise. Like, I think even the most optimistic Canucks fan at this point last year was talking about making the playoffs, maybe being the third seed in the Pacific Division, but by no means being the division champion in the regular season, by no means, being in the President's Trophy race in April as they were last year. So it was an absolute surprise and a very welcome one after what we had been calling a decade of despair here in Vancouver. The only other time they qualified for the playoffs was in the expanded bubble playoffs during the pandemic year. Other than that, you have to go back to that 2015 series against the Flames, the last time they legitimately qualified for the playoffs. So we had got 9 years, guys, between Stanley Cup playoff games in the city of Vancouver. Is a pretty long time. And this came after really what was the best era of Canucks hockey. So it was really dramatic. It was really quite a fall from grace. The team had fallen quite out of favor with fans here. So last year was the respite that we all needed. We sat here on the show and said many a times, oh my God, thankfully we just have a different story than what has played out year after year after year. For the better part of the last decade. So there's a lot of optimism here this year. I don't think it's quite as cup or bust as it is up in Edmonton. Number one, the Oilers made it to Game 7 of the finals. The Canucks didn't even get halfway there. So there are different stakes there as well. I think both teams are a little bit different in terms of their life cycles. And, for a lot of Canucks fans, they look at Thatcher Demko under contract for 2 more years, Quinn Hughes under contract for 3 more years, and think that's the window. And if we can get further than the second round this year, that will be a successful season. That would represent progress.
Moves fast. Because you mentioned the Quinn Hughes when I was just kind of looking this morning. There's 3 years left on Quinn. I still feel like Quinn Hughes is a baby. Like he's just he got a Norris. This is just starting 3 years left. That it does start to. It feels like the Vice is at 3 years. Not a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, like these now, like Patterson, Hughes, Demko, like these are now fully formed players. Like we used to talk at this time of year of how much untapped potential is there? How much further can they push the point totals, the needles? Remember, you're going to improve from within. That was a really common phrase here in Vancouver for a number of Septembers, improvement from within. And to their credit, they've all improved. I mean, Elias had a terrible second half of last season, but they all improved. Norris won, Hughes won a Norris, as you mentioned. Demko is the finalist for the Vezina. Patterson was on a 100-point pace until the second half when he sort of lost his way. So these are now fully fledged players, stars. Some might say that Quinn can be a superstar now. So there's no more improvement from within. Like this is what they've got. They might be able to uptick some of the point totals, but we know what they are as players. And yeah, it's go time. They've got to prove now. And, management has been very clear on this, that, okay, there's a difference between being a very good player in the National Hockey League and being a player who can help win you a Stanley Cup or drive a Stanley Cup run. And they're at the point now where they're hoping to turn the Quinn Hugheses and the Elias Petterssons of the world into guys like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, who are able to play their best and get their team through playoff series and eventually, of course, win championships.
Do you have that? I should have looked for it because I saw there was the terminology about Demko's knee, how it's an injury, but it's not. I don't know. There's some murkiness around it, which can be good or bad. I'm not sure, but he's not ready to go.
No.
It's Silovs, and they signed Kevin Lankinen. We saw there's a lot of goalies hanging around, but none of them are Thatcher Demko, who is going to be a big part of the success that the Canucks enjoy if they do this year. How troubling is it, I guess, from where you see?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Boomer, you've had me go back to Google to get the name of this muscle again. Like I'd never heard of it until
either had I. Yeah. You just ACL, MCL. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. That was the extent of my knee knowledge. ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus. But this was the week that we learned of the popliteus muscle, a small triangular muscle located at the back of your knee. And as I understand it, more often than not, this muscle doesn't do a whole lot. Like this isn't one of the big important muscles in knee movements, other than a few positions that goaltenders are now getting into and being coached to get into uptight against their post. So yeah, the troubling side of this. So the good news is this is not you're going to require surgery issue. Mm-hmm. The good news is this is you can play through this issue. The bad news is Thatcher Demko tells us, and he did some extensive research with his medical team, they cannot find a single instance of a hockey player having this injury to this muscle. So there is no precedent. There's no playbook here. And it's been a little bit frustrating for him over the course of the summer because for whatever reason, this muscle hasn't healed or hasn't gotten to the point, strengthened, that to allow him to do everything that he needs to do to play goal at the level that he has played goal. So there's no timeline for his return here. That said, he is on the ice. He's taking shots. So like you look at it and nothing sort of looks amiss, but there's still a whole lot of uncertainty. And I would have to think, even some concern and some fear about what this could be, given the lack of historical information. On
Dean and I are both big believers in RICE, and that's rest, ice. Compression, and elevation.
I thought it was eclairs.
That works.
I thought that was
that too.
Yeah. So there it is.
Yeah, that's a great guess.
Whoa,
that's well done. Yeah.
The old
there it is, guys.
So it sounds like this is one of the only Demko will be able to give a green light because.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
So are you good? You're not? Okay, I guess you're not playing.
Yeah. That's basically it. We're basically waiting on Thatcher Demko to say, okay, I feel good enough that I can play through this. And, that's the part that I think some Canucks fans are quite worried about, that this is just something he's going to have to learn to play with.
Yeah.
And it can cause some pain. So, he's had a bit of a riddled injury history to begin with. And now we have something that could well be chronic going on. So, all the more reason that the fan base here is full-throated and behind Arturs Silovs.
Well, I was going to say, what he accomplished in the playoffs, you feel a lot better going into game one in a couple weeks, knowing that you've got
not a complete off the cliff.
Yeah, right. I mean, and just to recap, guys, last year they needed 3 goaltenders to win games in the first round and became like only the 3rd team ever to do that in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The first since I believe there's a Pittsburgh team actually managed by Jim Rutherford. One of the cup teams that needed 3 goaltenders. Sure. So Demko wins game 1, gets hurt. Casey DeSmith comes in, wins game 2 against Nashville, gets hurt. Arturs Silovs has to come in. And the next thing you know, excuse me, your 3rd string rookie goaltender who's got a handful of NHL starts is carrying the mail against the Edmonton Oilers and damn near beats the Edmonton Oilers in a playoff series.
Well liked. I'm trying to think back to the playoffs. Obviously, you win some games and you help your team out, you're going to be well liked. But I thought the conversation was how much the guys really like him in the room.
Oh, they love him. They love him, and the fan base and the market fell in love with him. I mean, he's a cult hero here. He's a cult hero in Latvia too. He led them to a bronze medal at the World Championships 2 years ago. I mean, for a country that loves hockey but doesn't typically win much, he's a hero. He's a national hero. So an amazing story, an amazing progression from sort of a late round pick that no one really thought about. And the next thing you know, a couple of years back, he made a handful of starts towards the end of the season, and he's now become a critical part of the Vancouver Canucks present and perhaps the Vancouver Canucks future as well.
If you were a fan watching last night, maybe you took the summer and you didn't pay that close of attention as to what July 1st and free agency held. You may not have realized that Jake DeBrusk was a Vancouver Canuck. It was weird. There was, as we got close to it, there's always, Calgary's maybe sniffing around Jake DeBrusk. And then there's the debate, well, why would you do that? Where are you in your, arc of winning or trying to win, that sort of thing? And then he landed in Vancouver. And I don't think it was about 3 weeks ago, talked about how Vancouver made his decision real easy. The money was there. It was a long-term deal, good money. Were you surprised to see Jake DeBrusk land in Vancouver?
No, because we knew they were going to go out and get one of the best free agent wingers available for Elias Pettersson. We too had heard the Calgary thing, though. We had heard that he wants to be in Alberta and watch out for the Flames. And then the Canucks came and offered him the max term at $5.5 million, but also offered him an opportunity to play with a pretty good centerman in Elias Pettersson. And one of the things that became apparent last year, guys, as they went through the series against the Oilers, is they were a winger or two short. They just simply did not have enough scoring punch on the flank. And Elias Pettersson was playing through a nagging knee injury. And in his first real Stanley Cup playoffs, he had played the bubble playoffs, but that's an entirely different animal, or at least most. So he was really struggling, and he didn't exactly have a whole lot of goals beside him. Nils Höglander had a very nice season with 24 goals, but he was also quiet and struggled in his first playoffs. So the Canucks said, let's go out. I mean, they took a big run at Jake Guentzel at the trade deadline last year. They were hoping to take another big run at Jake Guentzel in free agency before his rights were traded to Tampa, and he signed there. The management group here knew Guentzel from Pittsburgh, so they had big belief there. When Guentzel fell off the market, and then you may remember in the early minutes of July 1st, a bunch of those free agent wingers started signing left, right, and it was Manthu signed in Calgary pretty quickly. There was a bunch of wingers that were off the board within minutes of free agency starting, and DeBrusk was still there, and they knew absolutely they needed a winger who could score some goals for Elias Pettersson. And they also wanted a winger who had a little bit of playoff pedigree, who had been there before, played in some big games, and of course, DeBrusk had done that with the Boston Bruins. So, yeah, a couple of goals last night. Needless to say, like his dad, he's got the gift of gab, so he's really charmed the market in all of his interviews so far. And they're hoping onwards and upwards, and that Jake DeBrusk is the guy who can unlock even better from Elias Pettersson, or at the very least eliminate the excuse that Pettersson doesn't have wingers to play with.
Right. And there's always, and if it doesn't work out, there's always Craig Conroy. It was, Zadorov, and then Linda. If you guys need anybody out there, just call Craig and he'll fire some guys out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, double-edged sword, right? Like, I'm sure it was difficult for some Flames fans to see Lindholm and to see Zadorov in Canucks colors last year, but I hear Hunter Brestevich had a pretty good camp. He could be a very good player, and certainly we took note of all the goals that Andrei Kuzmenko scored down the stretch last year. So, yeah, look, I do anticipate the Vancouver Canucks are going to be busy by the trade deadline.
Yeah.
They were last year. It's sort of the modus operandi of this group. If you look through Jim Rutherford's history in Carolina and Pittsburgh, he has often made big moves. He has often made big moves before the deadline. And of course, we saw that because both those Calgary-Vancouver trades happened well in advance of the actual deadline itself. We talked about this with Pinder last week when he was on our show, that for the Canucks, the big gaping hole is right side defense, second pair right side, because we anticipate Philip Hronek playing with Quinn Hughes again this year. And would they take a run at a Rasmus Andersson at some point later this year? Now, you're sort of running out of plum assets to give up if you're the Vancouver Canucks, but there's a school of thought that they might be all in this year, that this management group, after kind of being all in last year, like 3/4 all in, but didn't really want to pay the premiums at the deadline, whether they'll get even more aggressive and take very big swings like Andersson and some other frontline players.
What's Andersson's? I mean, we know him here in Calgary, so we have our opinions built on him, but from other markets, what does an Andersson look like, or what's the appeal there?
I mean, I guess I would ask guys, what isn't the appeal with Andersson? He ticks so many boxes. Right side guy, plays heavy minutes, good defensively, good offensively, great contract, term left. Wow.
Yeah.
Wearing an A there. I mean, Blake and I have talked about it on our show. Like, if you're making a bid for Rasmus Andersson and getting him this year, particularly if you're getting him in, advance of the trade deadline, I mean, I think that's a sun, moon, and stars return for Craig Conroy, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't think you move the player unless you're getting like 3 prime assets back. I would suspect that if he is available this year, he will be one of the best players available this year. So and look, at a scarce position like right side defense, I mean, I think Calgary could instigate a bidding war on this player and walk off with a haul.
Trouble being though, Matt, if they do move Andersson, the next best right-handed guy might be Rhett Warner.
I'm ready.
So I'm not sure.
my pulley monitor knee muscle is in great. My
Poliscamus is in great shape.
I'm ready.
Yeah, but it will be. And the only thing that can derail that here is if they exceed expectations and the kids come in and don't know they're supposed to be bad. They start winning hockey games. Well, you can't trade Andersson now because that's happened a number of times over the years. But he's got the 2 years left until
cheap.
Until he is traded or leaves as a free agent. It's going to be talk about when and how much do you get for Rasmus.
Well, and you just hit it, Rhett. Like, he's 4.55.
Yeah.
Like, if he's free this summer, he's a $9 million player, I think. Yeah. Like, he's pretty much being compensated 50% of what market value is. So, frankly, guys, like, I'm not sure around the league, people might be surprised by this opinion if you don't know Rasmus Andersson as well as we do in the Pacific Division, and certainly as well as you guys do. watching him grow up. And the other thing I'll note, he was selected with a Vancouver Canucks pick in the second round. You may remember the Sven Berchi trade, guys. When Ryan Burke was doing his utmost to run Sven Berchi out of town, and Jim Benning and the Vancouver Canucks took him out of jail and gave him a second-round pick for Sven Berchi, and they turned around and used the pick on Rasmus Andersson. But a lot of people around the league would probably not understand when we say that this is a player that if he goes to market will have had few peers, I think, on the trade block in recent memory here. Like, I can't remember right shot defenseman on a great contract, complete defenseman, plays every situation, being available with term. Like, so I think it's sort of one of the big names to watch this year on the trade bait boards, Seravalli's trade targets board.
Yeah.
Because I just think
and 27.
No, that's it. Like, again, he ticks every box. Like, there's really no wart on the player. So I would not be surprised to see him as a best available player on the trade block all year.
When are you doing the show now? Because it was afternoons, then we're going to mornings, and it's afternoon. When do we get Sekeres Price?
So 11:30 Pacific time, the show kicks off on YouTube and a bunch of other social platforms. We do some early recording work in the morning, and then the show runs from 11:30 Pacific, 12:30 Mountain onwards.
Do you miss the radio?
Yes and no. Boomer, I miss it when there's a big live breaking story. Like, we used to get that on our show, both when we were middays and when we were the PM drive slot.
Sure.
Is like a massive something would happen. Like, I believe we were on air the day. You remember that day, like several summers ago, was it Taylor Hall for Adam Larson?
Mm-hmm. And those 3 deals all went down at the same time. Yeah, Subban. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, when stuff like that drops during your show, that's a pretty cool adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
You know, that part I miss. I miss, working with some of the people we worked with back in the radio days. But, this side has its advantages as well.
Boom misses the mornings. He loves getting it.
Yeah, really?
The 3:30 alarm going off, those were the days. Yeah. No, I don't. I don't miss getting up. That was the hardest part of the whole thing.
Still conditioned to get up at a ridiculous hour? Were you able to break that?
Yeah, it took about 2 days.
Really? Attaboy.
Done on Friday. By Monday, I was sleeping until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. No problem.
Attaboy. Because I've heard so many morning radio guys in our business say that when you do it for as long as they do it, and then the end comes, you're up at 4:30. That is your lot in life. You see sunrise more often than you see sunset. Yeah.
I hear those are the same people who say, "Oh, I couldn't retire. I'll be too bored. I got to be doing something." I don't get that either. I think
I don't get it either. Too. If I could retire tomorrow, play golf every day, and sit on a beach here, that would be a pretty good life. I think I could deal with that.
I'd give it a try anyway. We'll try it for a few years and then see how.
Give it the old college try, boom.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Buddy, good talking to you. Sorry about Pinder in Penticton.
Yeah,
I can only control so much.
Again, he brought the flavor, and thank you for the invitation here, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. By all means, have a great season and call back in.
Likewise. Anything you need, reach out, buddy. Good to talk to you.
Hey, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And, of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.